Today, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to perform a post-mortem on a global crisis that hasn't actually happened yet. We're taking a trip to June of 2028 to walk through a fascinating and frankly terrifying scenario from Citronine Research that asks what happens if AI's runaway success actually triggers a worldwide economic collapse. So let's dive right in. The whole idea really hangs on this one brilliant paradox that was first floated back in 2026. What if everyone who's super optimistic about AI is completely right? And what if that's actually a terrible thing for the economy? It's a heck of a question, and the answer this scenario lays out is, well, it's pretty chilling. And this is where it all leads. By June 2028, the unemployment rate in the US hits 10.2%. But you know, the really shocking part isn't the number itself. It's the fact that, in this future, the markets have just gone numb. A number like this would have shut down the stock market just 6 months earlier. Now, it's just another Tuesday.
And that's the real mystery, isn't it? Back in October of 2026, the S&P 500 was knocking on the door of 8,000. Just 2 years later, the entire economy is a wreck. How did all that promise of an AI superboom lead to this? Let's retrace the steps.
A crisis like this never starts everywhere all at once. It's always a crack that starts in one place and spreads. And in this story, the very first domino to get knocked over was the software industry.
Here's the spark that lit the fuse. In late 2025, these AI tools that can write their own code, they're called agentic tools, they suddenly got really good. I mean, unbelievably good. All of a sudden, one good developer could spin up a working version of some super complex enterprise software in just a few weeks. The entire barrier to entry for the software industry, it just vanished. And things unraveled so fast it would make your head spin. In late 2025, agentic AI was just a buzzword nobody really took seriously. By mid-2026, corporate buyers had a brand new weapon. They could go to a software vendor and say, hey, that $500,000 product you sell? Yeah, we just built a pretty decent version of it ourselves. So, how about we renew that contract for, say, a 30% discount? The real bombshell, though, dropped in the third quarter. ServiceNow, a company everyone thought was rock solid, missed its earnings. And the reason was a total gut punch. They were laying people off to save money so they could pour it into the very AI technology that was destroying their business model.
And this right here, this is the engine of the whole crisis. It's a nasty feedback loop. AI gets better so companies can cut high-paying white-collar jobs. But those people who just got laid off, they were big spenders. So they stopped spending, which crushes consumer demand across the whole economy. That forces other companies to protect their profits by, you guessed it, buying more AI to cut their own labor costs. Each company is making a perfectly rational decision for itself, but when everyone does it, the collective result is an absolute catastrophe.
So you might be thinking, okay, that's bad for software. But what about the rest of us? Well, this destructive spiral didn't stay contained in the tech industry for long. Pretty soon, that same brutal, optimizing logic of AI was let loose on the entire consumer economy. The new target was basically any business that makes money just by being in the middle. I mean, think about it. So much of our economy is built on making money from friction, from things that are a pain or too complicated or just take too much time for a regular person to do. But for an AI agent, nothing is a pain. There is no friction.
And man, the casualties just piled up, one after another. Travel websites got hammered because an agent could plan a better, cheaper trip in seconds. Insurance companies that banked on you being too lazy to shop around every year, suddenly they're competing with agents that do it automatically. Real estate agents, tax preparers, even the 2 or 3% fee that Visa and MasterCard charge on every transaction became a target for AIs looking for a cheaper way to pay.
And this slide gets to the absolute core of the vulnerability. A ton of businesses, like DoorDash, for example, built their entire fortress on what the author calls habitual intermediation. You're hungry, you're a little lazy, you just open the app you always open. But an AI agent has zero brand loyalty. It doesn't get lazy. It's going to check every single option to find the absolute best price every single time. And just like that whole business model, poof, it's gone.
Okay, so up to this point, we've been talking about jobs and companies, the real economy. But this is the moment the fire jumps the firewall and spreads to the financial system. This is when a bunch of problems in different sectors suddenly accelerate into a full-blown crisis for everyone.
The problem started in this huge $2.5 trillion private credit market. All this money had been loaned out to buy software companies, based on the assumption that their recurring revenue would, well, keep recurring. But it didn't. The smoking gun was when Zendesk defaulted. Its whole business was customer service, which was getting replaced by AI. Its revenue dried up, and its $5 billion loan went bust.
So who was holding the bag on all this bad debt? This is the really crucial part. A massive chunk of that private credit was funded by big life insurance companies. They were taking the money regular people paid for things like annuities and investing it in these software loans. So the risk wasn't just walled off on Wall Street, it was directly connected to the life savings of ordinary American families.
Now, it's really tempting to compare this to 2008, but you've got to understand, this is a completely different beast. Back in 2008, the problem was fundamentally bad loans, giving money to people who couldn't afford to pay it back. In this 2028 scenario, the loans were good, the borrowers were prime, they had great credit. The problem wasn't the loan. It was that the entire world changed after the loan was made. Their high-paying job, the very thing that made them a safe bet, was suddenly disappearing. And here's where it starts to hit home, literally. Because all these white-collar job losses were packed into tech-heavy cities, home prices in places like San Francisco, Seattle, and Austin just started to plummet. The very bedrock of the U.S. economy, the $13 trillion mortgage market, was starting to crack. So now let's pull the camera back and look at the bigger picture. What does a crisis like this actually do to the fabric of a country?
I mean, this chart tells a pretty brutal story. For decades, the slice of the economic pie going to workers has been getting smaller and smaller. But in the AI era, it just goes into a complete freefall. You've got this booming productivity, but all of the money is flowing to the people who own the capital, who own the computers, not to the people doing the work. The economy is producing what the author calls ghost GDP. It's economic output that never actually touches the hands of most people.
And that, of course, puts the government in an absolutely impossible position. Their tax revenues are collapsing at the exact same moment that the demand for unemployment benefits and other aid is skyrocketing. The result? Total political paralysis. Infighting. Nothing gets done. And meanwhile, you start to see serious social unrest bubbling up, with movements like an Occupy Silicon Valley targeting the AI labs they see as the root of the whole problem.
So if you take just one thing away from this whole scenario, it should be this idea right here. Our entire modern economy was built on one single fundamental assumption, that human intelligence is scarce, and because it's scarce, it's valuable. This scenario argues that what we're living through is the great unwinding of that premium. Machine intelligence is becoming abundant and competent and cheap, and the financial system is violently repricing the value of human labor straight down.
Okay, that was a lot. And it's a pretty dark vision of the future. But now we get to the most important part of this entire thought experiment. It's time to step out of our time machine and look at all this from right here today. Because you're not actually living through this in June of 2028.
The original article was written in February 2026. None of this has actually happened. Those negative feedback loops we talked about, they haven't started spinning yet. The whole point of walking through this nightmare scenario isn't to say this will happen. It's to serve as a warning. The canary in the coal mine, it's still alive. And that leaves us with the final and most critical question. The author argues that we, as a society, still have time to get ahead of this, to build new rules, new systems, a new kind of economy for a world where machine intelligence is everywhere. This future isn't inevitable, but it forces us to ask the biggest question of our time: what are we going to do about it?